Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I am outside the Savoy Hotel in London. It's so named because in 1246 the Duke of Savoy built a palace here. Savoy, it's in northern Italy, was in an independent country, and this was the Savoy embassy to England at the time. So it later passed out of the hands of the Duke of Savoy, who also held the English title, Earl of Richmond. That related to Richmond in Yorkshire. Richmond upon Thames didn't have that name Richmond until the late 15th century. Henry VII gave it that. It was known as Sheen back then. Anyhow, later the Duke of Gaunt lived here, or John of Gaunt. That was King Richard II's paternal uncle. Richard II inherited the crown at the age of 11, and because of his tender years, his uncle, John of Gaunt, ruled on his behalf. John of Gaunt's name comes because he was born at Ghent in Belgium, and Ghent was mispronounced Gaunt back then. Of course, there was no Belgium in those days. It would have been Flanders. Still is Flanders, but Belgium as such didn't exist until 1830. Anyhow, there you can see that knightly figure in gold standing above the entrance to the Savoy Hotel. In 1381 there was a peasants' revolt. That June, John of Gaunt was very unpopular because of the new tax that was levied to fund the 100 Years' War against France. And peasants from Kent, Essex and other counties, they came in and they ravaged London. They showed people bread and cheese, said, "What's this?" And if they said "Brot und Kase," they were assumed to be Flemish and were killed on the spot. John of Gaunt narrowly escaped with his life. However, his palace at the site was ransacked and all his worldly goods were smashed. A peasant who tried to take one for himself was immediately set upon and slain by the other rebels. I won't go through the whole story of the peasants' revolt, but anyway, this place was razed to the ground in 1381. Worcester House is built on its site. It's very important for various reasons. Let's say here Oliver Cromwell had a meeting of various divines, and they came up with the Westminster Confession of Faith, which the Unitarians didn't accept. That was shortly before his death, in September that year. Geoffrey Chaucer was a prominent official in the late 14th century. He used to come to Savoy Palace, John of Gaunt's time, and composed many of his most illustrious works here. The current hotel, you see, only began in 1889, and there's a theatre on this side towards the end. Can't see it from this angle, I'm afraid, where Dreamgirls is playing. Many of Gilbert and Sullivan's plays had their world premieres at this site. So for centuries, well not centuries, for a century perhaps, this was one of London's most illustrious hotels. The trouble is the site is slightly pokey and it doesn't allow for all the modern amenities that one might want. Because these days people want a 5-star hotel to have an excellent gym, an Olympic-sized swimming pool and all the rest of it. And because of its site near the Thames, it can't give you all of that. It's near Fleet Street, sorry, near the Strand. Strand meaning beach in Old English, because it really was beside the river in right up until the 1860s when Basil built his embankment, because the River Thames was rather wider. So very convenient, Trafalgar Square and all that. Something else you might have noticed is a bit amiss about the Savoy here, is that they're driving on the wrong side. This is the only street in the United Kingdom where people are permitted to drive on the right, so that when they come out, they can easily turn left and join the traffic. There we are. Okay, I'd love to tell you so much more. Lunch at the Savoy Grill is said to be splendid. I've been in here only twice. High tea at the Savoy is another delightful experience, highly recommended. Book it if you possibly can. Obviously they give priority to those who are already guests of the hotel. And this hotel, it commands splendid vistas over the River Thames, which is just behind. That's all from the Savoy Hotel.